Hi, welcome to this video and welcome to the first podcast episode of Dear Future. This is a podcast series that I'm hoping to launch on this channel, and it will exist alongside all the other content that I have been producing on this channel. And if you are a returning viewer, you might find this setup a bit different. It is the flip side of how I would usually film my videos. So now you can see the desk that I film and I edit on, which I'm very proud of. It's been a combination of a few months and a lot of small changes here and there, but now I do have a desk that I'm pretty happy with. And you can also see my drawings up there that I've made that look like they've been made by a toddler. But it's cool, I like them. And now you can see them too. So what is this podcast about? I did want to name this podcast Hello Future, but if you are a fan of a particular K-pop boy band group that has been promoting their music nowadays, you might know that Hello Future is the title of their song and I guess their album as well. And I didn't want to look like a complete ripoff, and this entire sentiment was sort of inspired by that song as well. And I'm just exposing myself to be K-pop trash here, but that music, that song, even though it was a very commercial release, kind of made me reflect a lot about my outlook on life. Now, the idea for a future-oriented series is not new to me. I've been wanting to make a dedicated newsletter or a dedicated podcast series to the idea of the future for a really long time. I think since a few months ago. This is really because I found myself to be in an extremely cynical and almost depressive state. It was to the point where I just couldn't imagine a future for myself. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to pick up more fiction, more novels, because I really found myself losing that ability to imagine a future where I would actually be in, because even if I thought about the future, I just couldn't see myself in it. Like, I couldn't see how I was going to make a life out of the future with all this information that I was getting and all the kind of realities I was constructing for myself. It just wasn't a really great place. And yeah, so the song came out and it kind of pushed me to think like, yeah, I am sort of what I create. And if I was creating a lot of cynical, depressive stuff, then maybe I should try getting out of that and try to be a little bit more optimistic. Maybe not so optimistic, but try to articulate at least what I feel about the future and how I'm gonna go about one day at a time into the future, into this great unknown of things. So I am going to start each podcast episode with a letter to the future. And so this episode, I'm going to start off with a very general letter introducing myself to the future. So here goes. Dear future, hi. I hope you're doing well. I hope whoever is living in you, the future right now, is doing all right. Even if they're not doing great and things don't seem to be doing so well, I still hope that there are things that are worth living for. I kind of still hope that there are things that are still beautiful, things that we can still cherish. I kind of hope the environment gets a little bit better. I hope you're giving nature some time to recover. I kind of hope that, yeah, even if humans are not part of the picture, that the planet is doing okay. Future, I think you're kind of a scary thing. I've never really talked directly to you before, so this is new to me. And I'm not just talking to future me because that's easier for me to understand because, I'm me. I can sort of still control my actions. But future you are one big thing that I find really hard to comprehend. You were much easier when I was younger to understand, or at least even if you were incomprehensible, I was still kind of like on good terms with you, you know. I was still able to draw a house and say, this is what I want my house to look like in the future. It was a very casual thing. And I kind of lost that. I kind of feel like we've become estranged, you know. I don't really know you anymore. And I hope I can get to know you a little bit better, which is why I'm starting this video letter series. Yeah. I hope you will warm up to me. Wait, no, not like actual warming, but I hope you would sort of let yourself be known to me a little bit better. And maybe I will open up to you as well, but we'll see about that. So, future, I hope you don't feel so bad. I hope that wherever you are, that there is still love. There are still things to be grateful for. I hope that people are still learning not just for the love of learning, but I hope that the world is still kind of being continuously constructed, and that people and everyone, all beings, can be as healthy as they can be. That's basically it. So thanks for hearing me out, future. I hope you're having a good time. Where I am, and I'm pretty alright, I guess. Not the best, but I can do better. And I look forward to getting to know you. So that's all from me for this starting letter. Hope to hear from you soon. Sincerely, Nat. So that's the letter. I did not write that down. I just sort of spoke it out, whatever just came into my head. I hope that kind of resonated with some of you as well. Yeah, so as you can tell from my letter, there are a lot of things that I kind of want to touch and I want to get to know a little bit better. I definitely do think that the idea of the future has become this really dark, looming thing. And it's been really difficult to convey that to people, especially people from older generations. It's kind of hard to tell them that I do not expect to be earning a lot of money, or at least as much money as they are earning. And I also find it very hard to have desires the same way that they do. Desires for a settled family home, desires to provide and care for others, desires for a rooted identity in some senses. So in this podcast series, I am hoping to cover topics such as climate change, which was a pretty obvious topic in my letter. But not just that, anything that's got to do with the environment, the ecology, even economics, thinking beyond a capitalistic economy, talking about society, so talking about gender, talking about race even, or any sort of identity, about queer communities, and one big thing I want to touch on is the state of children in the future, because I care a lot for children. It's just I don't really show it because I'm scared that every time if I do show any sort of concern for children, people might assume that I have a maternal instinct. I don't think it's a maternal instinct. I think everyone has an instinct to care for the young. And I don't know why people think that having a parental instinct means that you want your own children. I don't necessarily think so. So anyway, that's a digression. Beyond that, I do want to cover topics such as like mental health. I don't know whether I want to get into politics. Things get kind of scary in the realm of politics, especially here in Singapore. So I'm not sure whether I want to talk about that. But if a lot of you do want to talk about that, I'll try my best to talk about that. And I guess for me, it's just really imagination. The end of it all is just to be able to imagine a much brighter future. You know, as as bright as it can be, as optimistic as I can be. This is me learning to flex my optimism muscle, which I do not have, and I do not want to wrongly portray myself as having that, but I am trying to learn to cultivate those kinds of mindsets. And this is something that I sort of had when I was much younger. I did have a really, really bright-eyed view of the world. I had really such an optimistic streak. And I always believed that the best that you can be is to be your most optimistic self. But then I kind of analyzed that as toxic positivity. And so I kind of want to moderate that a little bit. So yeah, the future. I wonder how it will be like. I think for a lot of us, I wonder how much of you are on the spectrum of having a very clear sense of what the future holds for you. I don't know whether this is a generational thing. I don't know whether it's just me. But the future seems really hard to understand. It's almost like a imperceptible thing to me. I can't really perceive anything of it. A lot of conversations with friends, we talk a lot about how we can't really imagine life after 2 years or 5 years or even 10 years. We can't really imagine how it'll be like to settle down, not just in a job, but as a person, as someone who belongs to this time in life of the world. There are just all these anxieties that seem to be so understated by the media or like by people or generally older people. And this is something that I've always had in mind. The people who were in earlier generations, right? So I'm 24 this year. So I am on the tail end of Gen Z, I guess, or at least at the very last era of millennials. And I do think that a lot of the people who are now Gen Xers or even much older, I guess pre-2000s, right? If you were of age pre-2000s, there were a lot of economic anxieties in the 90s, a lot of political instability as well. And, you know, when we learn about the history of these things, we think of them as really, really desperate and dire consequences then. And nowadays, you know, in the current present, I always feel like even if things get reported, they are not reported as like, oh, this is actually a lot worse than decades ago. It's just like, oh, it's bad. But we don't know the scale of things, right? And in reality, a lot of things are happening today. A lot of them are pretty bad in comparison to how we might see the 90s or the 2000s, or even the 2010s. Right? Of course, there are so many other metrics that are positive, and that's something that I want to get to know as well for myself. Like, what are the metrics that we are actually improving on? Because I don't really hear about that. Is it just me, or I just don't know how we are doing well as a society in general? So I do think that there is just so much catastrophe that's being put around in the media nowadays, and when that's coupled with, you know, a lot of demographic statistics, it does show a lot of people increasingly being single or lonely or alienated, people who feel a bit more prone to certain mental health conditions. And I don't think this is something that it's good. I personally have felt it a lot, that, you know, it's not so easy to want to be part of a community or to have kinship that really protects and cares after you, which is a great thing to have. It feels a bit harder to have that nowadays, and a lot of displacement is happening. A lot of refugees are moving around the world because of so many different factors: political, environmental, social. So much conflict is going on as well. It all feels really overwhelming. And all of this kind of has culminated in me desperately trying to find things to look forward to in the future, while at the same time trying to not be overly optimistic or overly having these rose-tinted glasses to the point where I don't recognize the problems in front of me. I feel that it's not good to be just flat out idealist. I do think it's better to be a bit more realistic and to not believe that everything is going right all the time. So I am trying to read this book called Staying with the Trouble. I think it's by Donna Haraway. Starting out, she does talk about how, it isn't about precisely constructing the future, but rather learning how to stay with the present and allowing the present and its troubles to bring you along. So it's, kind of being in the current and not really resisting the current, but learning how to navigate the current and learning to let go of the control, not trying to live up to a certain constructed ideal of how the future might look like. Not having these expectations that certain things are supposed to go certain ways, but rather being in this complex ecosystem of factors and finding life within that network of things, which is going to be part of my mindset towards this podcast series as well. As much as I want to envision and articulate a future that is ideal from my perspective, I also want to learn to let go of how I might think the future should look like, which I think a lot of us can't afford to do so. I think a lot of my anxiety stems from the fact that I feel like the future isn't going the way that I want, or that I'm so frustrated that other people don't see why I'm being so disappointed. And to some degree, I also kind of feel like it's so easy to close your eyes and not think about it, which frankly is a great strategy because it tires me out, tires anyone out to have to constantly think about how things should be better. And I'm still trying to find a balance between that, like balancing between accepting things as they are, but also not accepting things completely as they are. Wanting to effect change bit by bit and change to whose benefit. It's always a question, it's always a process that is continually undoing itself and doing itself over. And I know that this sounds all really abstract. I'm not here to give you straight answers. And you should kind of know by now that this channel isn't about answers. Yeah, you should know by now that this channel is all about the in-betweens, the really weird spaces, digging into the crevices of your mind and figuring out yourself, I guess, and just basking in all these things about life. Wow, that's such a great introduction to what I basically do on this channel. So cool, you've heard from me, you've kind of heard my letter to the future, and now I want to hear from you. This is kind of an interactive podcast, sort of. If you have the time and you would like to share, do pen down your letter to the future in the comment section down below, or any sort of anxieties about the future that you'd like me to touch on in subsequent episodes. I'm just this one person on this side of the world. I have certain anxieties that relate to me as this person here in this context. The things I might be interested in might not be things that are the most pertinent to you. And I would really like to know what other people on the internet are worried about. And, I want to also target this question, I guess, to people around the 20s, going out into the world and starting to really experience the world firsthand. Are there things about the future that kind of really worry you as someone who's trying to make a life of their own? I also would want to open the question up to, I guess, older people if you are watching this video, which would be really cool if you are actually watching me talk over here. Are there things about the younger generation that you kind of want to say, that you want to share about your experience? And I'm here, I don't want any old person, no, not old, I don't want any older person to say that we are privileged young people who don't know their place in life. I think you are better than that. I think you can definitely see that things are not that great, especially when it comes to the climate crisis. Things are not great overall, also when it comes to the labor, to the workforce, and to life in general. You know, starting a family, having retirement, things like that are just not as certain anymore. Not at least as it was maybe like 30 or 40 years ago. So, no complaints here, okay? But yeah, so I'm kind of excited to start this journey. I hope you are too as well. I will be uploading these podcast episodes alongside on my channel. And yeah, I'm psyched. This is kind of rare. I haven't really felt excited about a lot of things in a very long time. So I hope this is a good sign. So thanks for joining me here. The prologue episode is probably going to be a bit shorter than any subsequent podcast episodes that I might be filming. And do forgive the breaks in between because my camera can only record up to about 12 minutes of footage each time. So there will be in between breaks, between clips that I do not intend to have. But otherwise, a lot of this will be one-shot takes. And so you will hear a lot of ramblings and you will hear a lot of my hedging words that I am trying to use to fill up the time in between each sentence. So cool. That's nice. And I'm not sure how to end this episode. But thanks so much for spending your precious few minutes with me here in this space and for hearing me talk about my anxieties of the future. It'll be interesting to see where these things will take me. And yeah, cool. Hi, future. I hope you're ready for the ride because I am, I think. So thanks for joining me and I'll see you in the next episode. Don't forget to leave your comments down below for things that I should talk about, and I hope you're doing okay. I really do hope that you're doing fine. So see you in the next video and goodbye. Thanks.